Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart, distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, and international football, all from the perspective of a couple of Americans. This week, Arsenal kicked off a 25-26 season with an away match at Old Trafford against Manchester United. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Dove, and Happy New Year. I do love this point. And this, the grass is freshly cut. All opportunities, all possibilities are in front of you. And there are, 38 games to see what happens.
Yeah, it's a nice respite from the slump that I'm continuing to endure with the Chicago Cubs. So it's keeping my mind off that, if nothing else.
Welcome to sports, by the way. It only gets worse. I'm just going to tell you, it only goes downhill from here.
In all seriousness, it's like I've come to the realization over the last week or so since we last recorded that I can officially say I am into sports now. I think it was like something I was in denial about for the last few years of this show. Like I'm learning about it. I'm like kind of getting into it, but no, I am all in. I am a sports guy now. Yeah. It's a relief to be able to admit that.
And so much of what the way you sort of approach it is conditioned by your entryway into it. So I draw a lot of how I look at sports a lot from baseball, and like one of the cardinal rules of baseball, especially because the length of the season, is that you are never as good or as bad as you look on opening day. Mm-hmm. And I think that's always good to remember. I mean, it's especially good when you think about it in the context of like American football, where it's like, you got 16 games, let's figure it out. Whereas, even here, 38, as we know, this season is a marathon. And it is going to take a while. It's going to take a long time to get from here to the end, to May, and trophies, and who knows, for someone. But it's so easy when you've been waiting to have, you have a game to analyze, and it's so easy to just sort of overreact. And we'll try to avoid doing that too much today.
No promises. So there was some news that we didn't have time to cover last week, but it's probably worth it to mention in light of the unorthodox opening to the Premier League season, where it actually began on Friday with a Liverpool match. I don't remember ever seeing a Friday Premier League match before, right?
That's actually been happening the last few years. I think the first one I can really remember, partly because we played in it, was Arsenal away to Brentford. That was the Amazon documentary season, you may is where you would have experienced that. So Arsenal did that, and for a lot of reasons that we have discussed on this show and in other places, Arsenal did very poorly. They lost to Brentford. It was very frustrating and annoying. And then they wound up doing okay in the season. So again, but yeah, the sort of the Friday night opener has been kind of a thing. And I think in this case, certainly Liverpool, having won the title, is played into that decision to have them be the Friday night game. I don't think they were playing Bournemouth. I don't think there's anything particular about Bournemouth that, grabbed attention necessarily, to why that one. But I think also sort of as the opener to the game. Now, I know you didn't watch this. I did because it was Friday and I didn't really much else going on. The game, of course, the day, of course, began with a moment of silence in commemoration for Diogo Jota, the Liverpool forward who died in a car accident on July 3rd. So over the summer, not only him, but is also his brother, Andre Silva, who at the time was playing in Portugal. Penafiel in Portugal. So obviously very sad, very tragic for the both, for them, their families, for Liverpool and Wolves as well. Jota played a number of years at Wolves and was a very popular player there. By all accounts, was a very popular person everywhere he played. I remember watching in the Gold Cup, the international tournament this summer in Mexico, scored in their opening goal in the final. And the Mexican players, as part of his celebration, pantomime playing video games because he and Jota had spent a lot of time together at Wolves playing games, and he did something else. I don't remember if he picked up his shirt because he had a message on it, or they made a sign number 20 or something. There was something that he did that made that was about Diogo Jota. So I thought the pregame ceremony, moment of silence, they held up cards, showing the numbers, and gave a full minute standing ovation in the 20th minute. As Liverpool as a club, for unfortunate reasons that we've talked about on the show, perhaps has a little more experience with this sort of thing, but generally does a very good job with these kind of commemorative and memorializing events. And I thought it was a very nice, sort of ceremony. And then talking to some of the Arsenal people, they themselves felt a little affected by it. It's
right.
For a player that we largely didn't care much about because he kept scoring, because he was a problem for us and played for a club that we don't like. Certainly, obviously, the tragedy of his dying when he did, and obviously, both as someone who's very young, but also as an active player. And then to be commemorated in the way that he was, was sort of a sad opening to the season, but one I think fair play to Liverpool. I think very nicely done.
Yeah. So I've seen the joystick video game goal celebration the players do. That originated with him, you're saying, or
no? I think I should have watched that. Should have pulled up the clip. But the player, I don't remember if he pulled up his shirt and it said "Rest in peace, Diogo" or something, or or he gave some other signal with his hands. But there was something he did to directly connect this action.
Okay.
Sitting down and doing this action with his relationship with Jota.
Gotcha.
Which at that point, that would have been the Gold Cup final was the first weekend in July. That would have been, 3 or 4 days afterwards.
Oh,
very
right.
close. So very close chronologically.
Gotcha. All right. Moving along to some slightly lighter follow-up from the last episode. I had said something about when I was looking at jerseys that I thought that Gabriel Magalhaes might be putting Magalhaes on the back of the jersey, and we saw yesterday that definitely wasn't the case. It was just the jersey customizer from, I think it was Kitbag, which also went through some kind of weird URL shift where kitbag.com is now their Kitbag UK site, whereas that used to be their US site. And now it's kitbag-us.com. It's their US site. So I had been inadvertently looking on their UK site for a while. And I don't know, their site has been having issues. And I didn't end up buying my jerseys from them this time for a variety of reasons. But yeah, that was one thing, was either Fanatics or Kitbag. I forget which Kitbag is owned by Fanatics. So that's why it's hard to remember which. But they put in the customizer, number 6 with Magalhaes, which is just weird.
Because every sporting goods store is owned by Fanatics now, but that's a different.
Yeah, even the in-stadium stores are run by Fanatics. Yeah.
Well, that part, yeah. They have actually bought out, or they bought out, or whatever the arrangement is. But they basically the official Major League Baseball, NFL, all the American leagues do all their stuff through Fanatics. So yeah, if you go in the stadium, it's obviously going to be the official ones.
Right.
So that's where you're going to see that.
Yep. So, meanwhile, also. Congratulations in reviewing our starting 11 predictions from last week for this opening match of the season. You just about nailed it. The only thing that was off, and we can go through it from top to bottom, but the only one that was off was in predicting Miles Lewis-Skelly to start instead of Calafiori, which obviously that ended up. We can talk about the goal and what might or might not have happened if someone besides Calafiori were standing there when it began spiraling toward the goal line. But but that ended up working out well. But other than that, so Raya, Miles Lewis-Skelly, you predicted Gabriel, Saliba, White, Rice, Zubimendi, Odegaard, Martinelli, Gyökeres, and Saka started as you predicted. So yeah.
Admittedly, the left back position, really the two wing back positions, I think for everybody that was kind of the question, right? Is that who's going to go there? What direction is he going to go in? If you had told me they had started, that Lewis-Skelly, but also Jurriën Timber on the right, that wouldn't have been terribly surprising. I do think, and there was some conversation about this, Calafiori offers certain other things, including, for example, his set piece prowess, and as we'll talk a little bit about when we get to the game, that is a weak spot of United's. They generally been very poor on defending set pieces, and so to have a player like that, and I will say Calafiori he's definitely a bit of a wild card. He's definitely a player who is willing to make the kind of aggressive runs that kind of unsettle the defense. And sometimes coaches hate that because Arteta is, not unique among coaches in this, but they desire a certain amount of control. They want the game to be played a certain way, players to fulfill certain roles. And Calafiore sometimes feels like he's like, screw it, let's go. Andale, or I shouldn't say that, whatever the Italian equivalent of andale is. But with hair like that, it just kind of goes in the wind, and I'd want to let that loose too.
Yeah. So I was off by a bunch. I had Miles Lewis-Skelly. I also had Madueke and Nwaneri instead of Martinelli and I guess Zubimendi. I
do think, though, it'll be interesting as we talk about the substitution patterns on the bench and all of that. I am curious to see how it continues to play out sort of week to week, but also even within the games. And Arteta's talked about this in the past. Sometimes, we talk about players coming off the bench as substitutes, like they're sort of coming in as secondary players. And he sometimes used the terminology of, well, they're not starters, they're closers. They come in, and sometimes in the more important part of the game, right? In our case, defending the lead or perhaps searching for a goal. And so, the idea is that all 90 minutes are equal, and you want to be able, the guys who come in at that point are fulfilling certain roles, but they are still important. It's not because they're lesser players, but because the role of what they're being asked to do is different.
Yeah. Yeah. So getting to the match proper, just the formalities out of the way. So it was our first match of the season, August 17th of 2025, and we won away 1-0 to the Arsenal. So, or do they say nil? They don't say 0-1 to the Arsenal, even though that's the order that it's read in the score line.
You might hear it that way, although there are other, depending on how you're explaining what's happening. But I mean, it wouldn't be 0-1 to the Arsenal. That's weird, but United 0, Arsenal 1, because it tells you right away that the game's at Old Trafford. Same basic thing.
So I did end up watching this live. The late kickoff helped, as I was watching the lack of pregame coverage on Peacock, it was they just had kind of like, I guess you would call it almost like a screensaver, just like a peaceful slow motion montage, kind of like drone footage over the different stadia within the Premier League. And there was a segment getting close to kickoff time that had the Emirates, and I saw the nice big mural, and I saw Thierry Henry and the other players. Thierry Henry is the only one recent enough that I recognized the name at the time. And I noticed his number 14. And it was a mere moments later that I saw Viktor Gyökeres wearing number 14 in the match. And it occurred to me that that's the kind of thing where, like, you would expect in an American team or perhaps just a different sport that jersey number would be retired, like for such a great player who, like, was so meaningful to the team that it wouldn't take too long after he, retired from football, left the team, that jersey number would be retired. But it also occurred to me that, with soccer, the numbers 1 through 11, as we've covered a lot, have kind of semantic meaning, going from the keeper at number 1 up through, the attacking players, numbers like 9 through 11 or so. So is that crazy? Like, do they retire jerseys in soccer or in the Premier League specifically?
It's unusual for sort of the reasons you talked about, because there's so much tied into wearing certain numbers. I mean, that's definitely come about. It's definitely a very American thing, depending on the sport. Again, we can track back to the American example. It's baseball wears numbers first, and the numbers were originally just what order were you in were you batting. So theoretically, if you change the batting order, you could change your numbers. Now, typically they didn't, especially at the key parts at the top of the lineup who get more at bats. The first retired number in baseball is the Yankees retired Lou Gehrig's number 4, in part because of the tragedy of his death of ALS, which of course we also know as Lou Gehrig's disease. And so that they follow that up with Babe Ruth's number 3 and then Joe DiMaggio's number 5. And you started to see that the idea is this number is so connected to this particular player that really no one else can really ever wear it. Now, again, for reasons we talked about, typically you see these for the longest time, these numbers were not necessarily positionally assigned, but kind of positionally assigned. And so they're connected to certain not to individuals, but players on the field. I mean, even the number 14, if we're connecting it to Henry, I mean, plenty of guys have worn 14 since Henri left. I mean, Eddie Nketiah was wearing it just a year or two ago.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, there is a little bit, obviously, seeing Gyökeres, put on the number 14, when he was signed, and first showing his jersey, and he's doing the thing where stands with his back to the camera, looks over his shoulder. Like, I mean, obviously, people are like, well, wearing Thierry Henry's number, that's a statement of a move. Of course, don't forget that number 9 is currently held by Gabriel Jesus, who is currently not playing. So obviously you're dealing with what's available also.
Right.
So it again, it's a bit unusual. I mean, just to go back for a moment to Liverpool and Diogo Jota, Liverpool retired the number 20. Now, again, 20 is not a number that a lot of people wear, or guys who, there aren't a lot of number 20s in people like intrinsically associated with the number 20 in Liverpool's history in the same way. So that helps that. And it's interesting as you scroll through. So again, this is Wikipedia's list of retired numbers in association football. A good chunk of them are connected to, I mean, the ones I recognize, there's a bunch of them in England, more than I expected. I mean, some of them are connected to tragic events. Manchester City's retired number 3 for Marc Vivien Foe, who collapsed and died on the field while playing for Cameroon. So his and he was playing for City. His number 23 is retired. West Ham United retired Bobby Moore's number 6. But Bobby Moore was the longtime player, was also the captain of England's 1966 World Cup team, so he's got a certain resonance there. It's interesting to scroll through this list more than I was aware. A lot of it just seems like every Italian team has retired at least one number, and I looked through the list and I recognize these names: Roberto Baggio at Brescia, Javier Zanetti at Inter, Paolo Maldini at Milan. I mean, obviously, Diego Maradona at Napoli. It's kind of interesting to flip through some of these names and see who is and who isn't, and for what reasons they're listed. So, again, not the kind of thing you see. For example, you go to an American sports stadium, certainly for baseball in particular, and you'll see like a row of numbers that no one else will play, or no one else will wear for that club. Maybe.
Why do you say maybe?
I mean, because there are instances of numbers being unretired for various reasons. The first example at the top of my head is the New York Giants. The American football team had retired the number 1 for a receiver in the early part of a player in the early part of their history whose name I'm totally blanking on. But 2 years ago, they drafted a wide receiver out of LSU, Malik Neighbors, who, with the family's permission, the family said, yes, will allow the number to be unretired. And of course, American football is different because you have so many people on the roster that you almost can't retire that many numbers because you're going to start to run out of them pretty quickly. It's kind of an odd one. The Yankees have actually retired the number 8 twice. It was originally worn by Bill Dickey, the catcher, and then he was replaced by sort of his protege at the position, Yogi Berra, who of course wore number 8 for Bill Dickey. And then while he had been retired, they decided, no, we should retire Bill Dickey's number 8 because he was that good. And then of course Yogi Berra also has to retire because he was that good. So there's a lot of weird things that go into this. There's never some teams, the Boston Red Sox have like a set of criteria. Like you have to have played for the team for X number of years. You have to be in the Hall of Fame. Like there were rules connected to who gets, and even some players you think, oh, surely his number's retired. Nope. Didn't meet the rules. Whereas some, retire them for whatever, for various, there's all kinds of things. It's really just every individual team's decision, how they approach that.
No, of course. And it was Ray Flaherty, I believe. I just looked that up.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So, okay, interesting. Good to know. Moving on to the match itself, almost. This was our first peek at the new third kit that was unveiled over the summer on the pitch, as it were. What did you think, seeing it in person?
Well, I mean, seeing it live, I guess, on TV. I wish it was in person. That would have
good point.
To be at Old Trafford would have been something
in
else.
Motion.
Yeah. I mean, I liked it. We talked about this. I'm very positive toward it. I thought it's weird about how the psychology of colors and how they interact with, what they like, how the way they play tricks in the eyes. I thought we looked very big in them, which I mean could just be a related to the fact that we are actually a really big team. Like
Right.
we've talked about this, where we have a lot of big players, and I don't know if United, is I don't know really enough about much of their team to say that they're like a small team, but perhaps that maybe makes that stand out. But I thought we looked pretty good overall in that regard.
That is something they talk about in fashion, like white draws attention to size, and like darker colors minimize the appearance of size. Yeah, that is a real thing.
Yeah.
But we are a big team too, so but it amplifies it. Yeah. Yeah, no, I thought it looked great. It was, it's a look. I mean, one thing that was interesting that I didn't notice, it's one of these stupid details, but I care about stupid little details like that. Looking at the collar, so it has like, the V-neck collar because it's the polo collar, but where the V-neck kind of comes down, there are no buttons like on their home shirt from a few years ago. But what they do have, which is interesting that I don't remember seeing before, is a little strip of maroon fabric. So at the V, like the bottom of the V doesn't show their skin or whatever they're wearing under their jersey. It just shows like it's like a little strip of maroon, which it's a nice little touch. It looks pretty cool in there. So
yeah, no, I like them. It's a weird thing. They do a lot of little supplemental details, which of course you can't see unless you're like right up close to it.
Yes.
But
or editing a reaction video about it last night. Go watch that if you haven't seen it yet. But yeah, it's like a textured. It's not just sublimation. It's like there's a texture to the fabric where it's almost like more like embossed.
Yes. Well, as we were talking before the show, my kit is somewhere in the U.S. Postal Service system. So hopefully at some point I'll be able to report directly on what it actually is.
It is somewhere in Texas.
That's the last thing I was told. That's the last thing the U.S. Postal Service told me. But that was as of Saturday. So who knows at this point?
Isn't that a George Strait song? It's like somewhere down in Texas, I think, or something like that.
Possibly.
So one of the biggest things that I was looking for, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this first match with the new squad, is how did these new guys do? Viktor Gyökeres, I think Zubimendi, did he go 90?
Yes, Zubimendi played. Zubimendi played the whole game.
Yeah. So like the new guys, Madueke came in. How do you think the new guys did?
A mixed bag of performances, which isn't terribly surprising. We'll start with Gyökeres, who's kind of the centerpiece of all of this. And I think this goes to the performance in general. He was, I don't want to say anonymous, because I don't think that's quite fair, but certainly I think the way we talked about him and the necessity of the striker, all that, I think in some ways you would have hoped for a little more. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that I thought we were a bit disjointed overall. And again, we've talked about the signing for so long and the possibilities. I mean, bear in mind, he's been with the team for like 2 weeks at this point. Like he really hasn't had a lot of that time, and he does some different things. He's unlike a lot of the players we've had. He's not necessarily looking for space, sort of in the way we've talked about Kai Havertz. He's more likely to move to try to break the lines and get behind the defense. So he's looking for passes that we haven't been making before. And I think there were some times you sort of saw him making a run and him not really being seen by Odegaard or by others. And so I think that's just the sort of thing that's going to develop a little bit over time. A lot of times when he got the ball, you saw it. He had back to goal, and he was basically leaning into was it De Ligt, usually the United center back. And I mean, it's going to be an adjustment. He did play a couple seasons in England before going to Portugal, which were not particularly good. And again, he's gotten older, wiser and all that. But it's the Premier League is much faster, much more physical, and he's going to have to get used to that. He probably will. It's not the position you want him in because he's not a hold-up player like we've seen with Havertz, or I'm thinking Olivier Giroud was really good at this, who played back to goal, stop the ball, and then find midfielders or wingers making runs around him. That's not really who Gyökeres is. That's not really his game, and so I think that's sort of both the rest of the team getting used to what he's doing, but also him getting a little bit used to what the rest of the team is looking for. And I think there'll be an adjustment with that. So, I mean, again, kind of, I wouldn't say a 60 minutes forget. He didn't do anything badly, but he didn't really do anything either. So,
right. So in terms of style of play, just so I understand what you're saying, so it's more like instead of being the kind of player who's going to get the ball at his feet and get past whoever's between him and the goal, it's more like get into a spot where they don't expect you to be and get the cross that allows you to score. It's more like that, you're saying? Or
yeah, and he's going to be looking for those spaces. He's going to be looking for what we call them through balls. So when you see a pass go sort of like through the defenders, it looks like it's going to open space while the other player runs onto it and picks it up. That's the kind of pass he's going to be looking for. And he's not going to be holding the ball, waiting for others to move around him. He's going to be the one doing the moving. Is probably a better way to think about it. And again, that'll just sort of come with a little bit of time and a little bit of adjustment as well, for both of them, because he's going to be doing some things that, you know, he doesn't play the way a lot of our other forwards have played in the recent years. And so there's going to be an adjustment period for his teammates too, is sort of, he is going to be making that run, and that's a pass I can be looking for. One positive you can maybe draw from that performance is he does draw a lot of attention, and I don't know how much you noticed in the early part of the game. Martin Odegaard was much more active than we saw at a lot of points in the season. A couple of driving runs forward, and partly because he has a lot of space in front of him because the defenders are being occupied by Gyökeres. De Ligt can't step up to Odegaard because he's got to watch, Gyökeres and try to mark him out of the game, which to a certain extent he did. So, that's part of the adjustment. As far as Gyökeres' performance, he didn't really do anything poorly. He also didn't really do anything particularly well. So, it's subbed off at 60 minutes. Brought on for Kai Havertz, who, I think you saw Havertz was kind of all over the place, as he typically is in the front line. So it's a different kind of player doing different kinds of things.
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
As far as Zubimendi, he's definitely slotting into the Party, Jorginho, the deep-lying defensive midfielder role. I thought he was fine. Had a few moments where I think he was, I don't want to say overwhelmed, but definitely he's going to have to adjust a little bit to the speed and physicality of the Premier League as well. There was also an instance where he got elbowed in the head that wasn't called, and, there's a little bit of a welcome to the league moment with that. Make of that what you will. But, I thought he did some good things defensively. I think tactically we had an issue where we were trying to push forward a lot, and United was able to counter us a lot of times and break the other way, having already pushed through our midfield. And I'll say this for Gyökeres and for Zubimendi as well. You look at the players around them. I thought Saka kind of had a non-factor in much of the game. I thought Declan Rice was basically anonymous, which is, kind of unusual. Martinelli had a couple good touches, good moments here and there. He does such good work defensively, but going forward was a little... I mean, honestly, I think our two most dangerous offensive players were Odegaard and Calafiori, and that's not even thinking about the goal, just in terms of driving into the box and creating opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting place to be.
Yeah. But then quickly on Madueke, he it's interesting. Because of when he came in, I don't think he was being asked to do the same kinds of things. Like, he comes in as a replacement for Martinelli, and I don't know that he's necessarily supposed to be doing the same kinds of things that Martinelli was doing, because at that point I think we're trying to take the air out of the game and try to limit opportunities and see out the game as opposed to continuing to push forward. Now, again, that was at 60 minutes. Now I'm looking at 60 minutes, so there was a little bit of time. I didn't see Madueke again. I didn't see him do anything badly, but I didn't really see anything that made me go, Madueke.
Yeah, it wasn't that pronounced. He had one near miss in stoppage time where Saka crossed it and he almost headed it in. It was a close attempt, but didn't quite connect. But yeah, overall, no, yeah, I'm with you.
So overall, in terms of their performances, I think you can see they still need a little bit of adjustment, both for themselves, not so much Madueke, because of course he's been in the Premier League, but a little bit of adjustment to the league, and then I think as well just some general adjustments for Arsenal, for the player and the team to sort of figure out the roles they're going to play. I thought Zubimendi fit much more neatly into the party role than Gyökeres fit into the Havertz role, but that's partly because Gyökeres and Havertz are very different players, and that's going to be an adjustment as they figure out how they fit in most effectively.
So let me ask you something. We talk about adjusting to the Premier League, and we know it's mostly like the physicality, maybe the speed a little bit, but if you were talking about adjusting to La Liga or Ligue 1 or Serie A, like what are the other things? Like, is that a challenge for players, and how is that challenge different? Like, what are those leagues known for?
It can be hard sometimes to break away from the stereotypes of the league. Generally speaking, the continent is considered less physical. Now, of course, this is all relative. Even England looks at like even the lower levels, like the Championship, where you look up at Scotland and like, geez, man, I mean, it's freaking rugby up there. They're generally less physical. They can be a lot more technical too, and so the technical ability of individual players is sometimes seen as much higher. Not that English players aren't technical, or players in England aren't technical, but that's kind of prized. Individual teams have different tactical setups, and so it's hard to simply say. I mean, Italy's famous for the catenaccio, the gates, like the strong defensive play. Although Serie A has opened up a lot in the last, they were famous for that in the 1990s. It's obviously been a long time since then. Germany can be a little bit more end to end. Depending on who you're talking about. So it's hard to break away from stereotypes and sort of thinking about that. But the larger bit of it is this is the part of the Premier League's advertising that's kind of true, is the depth of the league is so much greater that, United, I think United is actually better than the 16th team in England, but they were 16th in the table last year. They weren't very good. I'm sorry, were they 17th? They were way down there, right? They were not very good. And yet there they were in the finals of the Europa League. Spurs, finished 16th, and they won the friggin' Europa League. 16th best team in England, allegedly. And a lot of it's just because they have more money. Like, Champions League quality players are going to I was going to say Aston Villa, but Aston Villa's been in the Champions League. I mean, going to places like Bournemouth, they can go to places like Brighton or to Wolves. Like, that's, not that it's entirely them, but I mean, one team in the last decade other than Paris Saint-Germain has won Ligue 1. Ligue 1 is generally considered well behind the others. I mean, but, Bayern Munich has won, 11 of the last 12 Bundesligas. The Juventus for a long stretch dominated Serie A. I mean, Real Madrid and Barcelona, and occasionally Atletico Madrid. But if you're outside of one of those big clubs, it's a substantial gap in terms of the money they have, the players they're able to acquire, and so that's a part of it too. Is just the quality of player you're facing on a week in, week out basis.
Yeah, for the record, United finished 15th last season, so it was close in that ballpark.
Yeah.
So no, it's that makes sense. I hear what you're saying there. So we covered how the new players did yesterday as we record. We're recording this on Monday. What about the recently returned players? So we had a handful of players who were injured toward the end of the season. That was probably the biggest problem with last season, was just the number of injuries that we sustained throughout the season. And so as we closed out the season, we were missing Calafiori, White, Gabriel, and Timber, right? Ben
White did play in the final game.
The final game, right? Okay.
Although having missed a bunch of the season because Timber played the whole season, then he was hurt late. I think White played the last game. But anyway, yes, a lot of players just missed a lot of time last year for injuries.
So, I mean, how do you think? I mean, obviously, like we were talking about Calafiori pressing into the box, like acting dangerous. It seemed like he's pretty much back to what he had been before injury. What about the rest of them?
I mean, I thought Ben White was good. He's a little bit more offensive-minded, and the Timber is a little bit more defensive-minded. If we're thinking about the players on the right back position, again, these are sort of overgeneralizations. Ben White's a fine defender. Timber is good going forward. I thought both of them were fine. I think White suffered a little bit from some of the lackluster day had by Saka and some of the other mistakes in the midfield. Timber, I think, maybe was slightly better in terms of locking it down. But I think in both cases, I think you're going to see a lot of both of them this year, and I feel good about where they are. And then Gabriel, Gabby looked pretty good. The central defense in general looked really good. The two center backs and Raya, I thought overall were probably the strongest part of the team. In general, I don't know, in terms of watching those players, was there something you were looking for maybe in their performances, or something you saw or noticed in terms
just noticing in the past when players have come back from protracted periods of injury, just cobwebs and rust that, needs to kind of shake off a little bit. But at the same time, a lot of them had over the summer, they've been playing in friendlies. So maybe they might've gotten a little bit of that, a little bit of that taken care of, before yesterday's match. So I'm just kind of looking for your point of view on that. So
no, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, we've sort of touched on individual performances and all of this, but I think we really do need to take a step back and gather the whole picture here. I mean, just in general, how do you feel about yesterday, about opening day? Let's overanalyze. Let's do the thing we said not to do. Let's overanalyze opening day. How do you feel about where we stand with one down and 37 to go?
Yeah, so I feel like my personality, so the game is over, and my dad, I watched it live. I was on a call with my dad the whole time, so it was kind of fun because Peacock it used to be that you could like pause it and like kind of like let the live stream slip a little bit and then get it perfectly in sync, and we used to do that. But now they don't let you do that anymore. When you resume it, it always catches up to what it thinks is live, which is not the same in his house and my house for some reason that I can't fully explain. Just, the intricacies of the internet and the way that it works. But so we were talking and the game was over, and he was basically saying that, oh boy, United looked a lot more dangerous during the match. And, we were looking like kind of especially after we scored the goal, but maybe even for a few minutes before we scored that goal, that, maybe we kind of let off the gas and things weren't pressing forward. To me, I didn't have a lot of complaints. It was just kind of like, what? It's the first match of the season. We came away with 3 points, they'll figure it out. I guess I cut them a lot of slack because of how many new players were getting worked in at the same time, right? We had at least a couple on the pitch at any given moment that hadn't been playing with the rest of the squad in a match that mattered yet. And everyone else, it was coming back from summer, and not all of them had necessarily international team matches that they were playing over the summer. So it was a break to varying degrees for them. I just kind of, I don't know. I wasn't ready to kind of jump on them. Maybe I would have more had they lost. But I think it's like they came away with the win. So I'm like, hey, look, it's Old Trafford. We came away with 3 points. Who am I to complain about it?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, the game was kind of, as they call it, a coach's dream, right? Because on the one hand, you won, so, you got the result. But on the other hand, there's a lot of things to work on there. A lot of things, the team can't be feeling too good about themselves because the performance. This is kind of an interesting thing in terms of had we had this conversation that even this time yesterday, or certainly in the immediate aftermath of the game. I mean, I'll say that, right? Because a lot of the outside discourse has sort of been are you a glass half full or glass half empty? Because of the half full approach, right, we won at Old Trafford, which is not something we do very often. Yeah. I think I've seen numbers floating around. It's like the 6th time in the last 30 years or something. Like it. We do not win. I mean, and good Arsenal teams have struggled, dropped points to lesser United teams over the year. Now, some of that is also a lot of really good United teams in the same stretch, so and some lesser Arsenal teams. But I mean, it is a stadium that we have a lot of trouble in, and so in that sense, you really can't and really shouldn't be too critical of 3 points away to United, even if they are a reduced United side. I mean, you talk about the new players. I mean, you can throw the glass half. Let's lead into the glass half empty part. United was working a number of new players into their lineup as well. I mean, their two most dangerous players on the day, Cunha and Mbeumo. Mbeumo in particular was had a pretty good day yesterday. The two new players in their lineup were their most dangerous. They're integrating new players as well, but actually did a lot to push forward. I've heard various explanations for this. Some of it's tactical. United's 3-4-3 formation is a little unusual in the league, and so it's not something we see a lot. I did think, though, we were also kind of sloppy in a lot of ways. But I can switch it back as well, again, to the half-full position, the half-full perspective. Again, we won at Old Trafford. That's good. We got 3 points. That's good. This is a game we drew last year, which, on some level, maybe we shouldn't have, but also based on the performance, maybe we should have. I can also look at this and say, as dangerous as Mbeumo and Cunha were at times, I don't know. United, you start to look at the numbers and you think back to the game. United had maybe 2 good chances in that game.
At least 2, yeah.
The one, I think it was a Cunha chance that Raya got down, really good save, palmed it off. That was a really good save.
Right, where it rolled along the byline after, yeah.
Yeah, and there was one. It was Dorgu came down and it ended up rolling across the face of goal.
Okay, I think that's the one that I was just talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, but otherwise, I mean, what I saw from United was a lot of really low percentage shots, a lot of shots from distance. Even the one from Dorgu, that shot was a terrible angle. You don't want to shoot from there. Like, that's a terrible. You have to get a kind like. The most likely result is that it rolls across the face of goal. That you really, in that situation, you would want to pass and have somebody run on to try to punch it in. They had the one, was it Cunha or Dorgu? He hit the post.
Yeah, that was Dorgu. Yeah.
Real breath intake, moment, but also like shot it from way outside the box. That's not a shot you can just take and go, oh yeah, I'm hitting this one. Like there's, in a sense, what they got. I mean, they outshot us. What was it, 22 to 7 or something like that?
I didn't see, but that wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm looking at ESPN's numbers. Yeah, shot attempts 22-9 for United, and yet, like, again, I don't know how much people put into XG. Not everyone puts a lot into it. There are some problems with it, but the XG wasn't that different. Like they took a lot of low percentage shots that in a lot of cases didn't really want. I mean, how many of those shots were just were wide? You see Raya do that thing where he just holds his arms out as the ball goes well wide, like he's never really close to goal, or gets blasted into the second deck. Like there's not. And some of that is a testament, I think, to our defense.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
We're really good defensively.
Oh yeah.
And I know everybody wants the team that's driving forward and free flowing and swashbuckling and scores goals from all angles, like Liverpool. But we were up 1-0, and I don't want to say United had no chances to get back into the game, but for a team as desperate as they were to get back in the game, and for as much as they looks like they controlled the game possession wise, that game could have gone on a long time, and they were going to struggle to score.
Yeah.
So to me, the positive angle is that we can have a day where we played poorly, and we played poorly. Let's not sugarcoat it, especially offensively. I can be not happy with that. I can be comforted by the fact that Declan Rice is a better player than what we saw yesterday. Bukayo Saka is a better player than we saw yesterday. Like, our two of our best players had really bad days. And so I can sort of take all of that and say to myself, we won 1-0 at United. Who cares? This is not a team that's going to rest on their laurels. This is not a team that's going to say, well, problem solved. We're all good. Nothing to work on here. I expect and certainly hope. And again, it's a tough location, et cetera, et cetera. I should hope that we get a stronger performance on Saturday against Leeds.
Yeah. For multiple reasons.
But
I hear what you're saying. I think also thinking more about Rice, and you called him anonymous, and I think for probably like 89 minutes of regulation time, I think that was probably true. But it was his placement of that corner kick is what allowed that goal to score, right? And I think it really, after that point, did come down to where the phrase 1-0 to the Arsenal came from, right? Like you've talked about in the past, that we can win 1-0 because we won't concede after that. And our defense is strong enough that isn't a surprising result. It's nervy, because there's always a chance, but it's not entirely surprising once we scored early that it turned out that way.
Yeah, and we had a few instances last season where we dropped points from ahead, and it wasn't unreasonable that could happen. But having said that, I mean, think about the team we're going to be compared to the most this season, Liverpool. Liverpool was up 2-0 in their game against Bournemouth and gave up 2 goals, and it was 2-2. Now they scored twice and, got a nice dramatic opening day win, and, they're +2 on goal difference. We're +1, and, okay, fine.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I don't want to overread either of these results, but I think I feel more confident in our defense holding a lead, even after the experience of last season, than I do Liverpool's holding that lead. Liverpool will probably win a lot more games because they're just gonna bludgeon you with goals. Right. Whereas I think I don't know if Liverpool could. I don't want to say couldn't win a 1-0 game. I just had a hard time seeing a lot of Liverpool games ending 1-0.
Right.
I don't think a lot of Arsenal games will either. I think our offense will click into form as we, as the season moves along. But at the same time, again, our 3 best players on the day were Gabriel, Saliba, and Raya, and that's going to end. Sometimes that's just going to end 1-0.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had an idea for a particular way to handle a particularly touchy subject. You want to describe that a little bit?
Right. So we say this mostly tongue in cheek, but we've spent. Last year, I made a promise I wasn't going to talk about the referees. Then we spent a lot of time, especially in the early season, talking about the referees. So what we're going to try this today and see how this works. We'll call it like a box. And we'll just have 5 minutes in a box where we'll talk about the referee. That's it. Doesn't have to be bad.
I'm going to point. It's going to show up right around here. You should see 5 minutes showing up right about now, and it'll start counting down once we begin the conversation.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can figure out how to do that.
Yeah. So we're going to go into the referee box or the referee corner. I don't know. We'll come up with something for it. And so to talk about the game, which by the way, we should pull up before we get started. I got, what was referee's name? Simon Hooper. Yes. Was the referee, not Richard Dreyfuss's character from Jaws, but Simon Hooper was the referee. My opinion on this has actually changed a little bit from the day of, because obviously in the day of and during the course of the game, you're invested in what's happening. And again, the history of United and Old Trafford and, how they always seem to get the calls. And I don't know where 6 minutes of stoppage time in the second half came from. That was very interesting and yet entirely unsurprising. I thought he was very inconsistent overall. It did feel, obviously in the flow of the game, you feel like, why is he calling all of these fouls against us and they're not calling fouls against United? I do think there was some inconsistency there. If you look statistically, again, this is ESPN's page, has fouls 19-10 for Arsenal, yellow cards 4-1 for Arsenal, which I think was involved in some of the substitutions we saw.
Sure.
I don't feel that was reflective in the way the game was actually played. It did feel that United was allowed to clatter into us a little bit more than we were allowed to clatter into them. Now, they'll point to a few other instances. A lot of United fans are talking about the on the goal about Saliba going into the keeper. But it's interesting, again, sort of interfan discourse. I mean, one of the things coming into the game was, the United's weaknesses at keeper, either Onana or the keeper who started, Bayindir, being weak in the air. And, there's plenty of United fans who'll say this, and a lot of neutral commentators too, that, okay, yeah, does he get bumped by Saliba? Yeah, but also you're the keeper on a corner. Like, that's your job. And compare that to Raya, who does that. Now, I know we're in the ref corner, we're talking about keepers. But anyway, I thought the performance was largely inconsistent, annoyingly so. Again, how much of that is tied into my own paranoia about playing away to United and just the things that always seem to happen at Old Trafford and how that just always seems to go, which is very strange. Maybe he's being influenced by the crowd a little bit. I feel a little bit, I feel like Arsenal were a little bit more hard done by than United were. I think it's fair that United can have some complaints, but the inconsistency in the game sort of bothered me. I'll ask your opinion on that in a moment. So there was a yellow card given out to. There was a point in the game where an Arsenal player received a yellow card. Hold on, I'm trying to find the course of the game. Yeah, right around the time that Dorgu got United's only yellow, because of course there was only one yellow card offense they committed. Raya got a yellow card at the same time. And Timber picked one up later. Lewis Skelly did as well, but I knew that I saw that foul. The Raya and the Timber ones, and again, because I can't hear the commentary where I am, I don't know, did you hear anything? Do you see anything? Do you remember what those were for? I'm not saying they're wrong, I just don't remember what was going on.
No, I missed the Timber one completely, and Raya, I guess I just assumed was time wasting because it was late in the match and it was a yellow card on the keeper, so I didn't think too much more about it, but no, I don't know.
Okay, yeah. I mean, obviously it's, ESPN's commentary, all it says is Jurriën Timber is shown the yellow card. Well, okay. Well, yes, that's good. Yes. Again, David Raya is shown the yellow card. Dorgu is shown the card for a bad foul. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lewis Skelly for a foul. Yeah, I saw that.
That may just indicate that they're not particularly clear on what it was for either.
Right. I mean, obviously, this is commentary that's being posted up right as it's happening. So, there's a little bit of a limit to that. But that was a frustration for me. Anyway, let me turn it over to you while we have a quick chance. Any thoughts you had? Anything stand out about the officiating to you or anything worth mentioning?
I had noticed that there were more calls going the other way during the match. I don't know. I guess I was just in a really good mood yesterday after that early goal. Like it didn't really get to me so much. Like the ones that got called against us, I generally felt like the ones that I knew what happened. Obviously, those late yellow cards, it didn't register that they'd been called at all. But the ones that I saw the replay of, like there's the one shirt pull. I was like, yeah, that was a pretty excessive shirt pull. There was some stuff like that where I thought it was warranted. There were definitely some that I did feel like we got away with, like at least one or two that I didn't see. The Saliba one you're talking about during the corner kick, that I didn't actually see. So I'll have to look at the replay of that one. But
yeah, I mean, as he goes up, because as the keeper gets a touch on the ball and as the corner kick comes in, he gets a touch on it. It's probably going in without Calafiori's head, but he runs in and kind of finishes it from point blank range.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one is Saliba's going up, and is he going up for the ball? Is he just making contact with the keeper? I mean, that's a hard one to say, obviously.
All right, whistle. All right. We are at the 5-minute mark now. Do we go into stoppage time?
I don't have a need to. I said my piece. I mean, unless I took
stoppage time for when we were talking about goalkeepers instead of referees.
Well, yeah, we are. This game was at Old Trafford, so there's a lot. I'll just mention I'll sort of leave. I will be done. But if there's anything you want to say about this, anything you want to add?
I got it. Like I said, I don't really have strong feelings on the calls from this. Like I don't have any reason to disagree with anybody on the other side of it. I'm just kind of neutral on this match. So
he said while wearing an Arsenal shirt. That's okay.
Yeah. So one thing that I thought would be interesting to consider, and I'm really leaning on you for this because as I've said before, I feel like your memory for these things is way, way, way better than mine is. But if you can turn the clock back in your head to 1 year ago when we had our opening match of last season, how do you feel after this match? And keep bearing in mind what you said earlier, that you can't read too much for better or worse from the first match, but how do you feel? Like, what is your outlook on the season compared to your outlook this time last year?
So I had to look it up and remind myself. So last year, opening day, we beat Wolves 2-0 at home. Okay.
Not the 4-0 that City beat them by this week.
No, but a Wolves team that was not very good. That's I think that's fair to say. I came away feeling pretty confident about that game, in large part because it sort of played out the way we wanted so many of our games to play out. Saka was fantastic. he got 1 goal. Yeah, he had 2 goals that game. I think we were sort of at that point we were like, oh man, this is it. This is going to be the year. And overall, I felt pretty good about the performance. In terms of comparison, one of the big changes is last year's opening day performance was much stronger than the performance we got today, or got for yesterday for this week. I think that's fair to say. That being said, 2-0 win at home against a team threatening relegation is very different than an away win. I know, and they were the 15th place team last year, which I'm just going to keep saying and sort of reveling in it. I do think they're going to be a little bit better. I do think I would be surprised if United finishes outside the European spots because they're not in Europe this year. Those are games they don't have. I think if they don't get into a European spot, I think Amarim's in real trouble. But that's just kind of how it goes at a club like Manchester United, which fair enough. In a sense, I feel better because this is a game. We've talked about the difficulty of this game. I hesitate to be too critical because we won at Old Trafford with a poor performance. Yes, this performance would probably lose in 2 weeks at Anfield. Mm-hmm. But I don't think we're going to play this way in 2 weeks at Anfield. God, I hope not. Right. I mean, it would be bad if we did this in a different stadium against a different opponent. But we did. We did it in this one, and this time, in this place. And we've watched enough of this team I've watched enough of this team long enough. I know. I think you've watched enough of this too. This team's better than what we saw. Mm. So that we're not asking them to ascend to a different level. This team, we've seen this team play much better than that. We can be frustrated that they didn't do it, while also acknowledging they probably aren't going to play this poorly going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good call on that. So one thing, as we're kind of closing out our discussion of this match, one thing that we had kind of guessed about a little bit last episode in light of our new acquisition, having a striker where we haven't really had someone slotted into that role recently. We talked about how we might change up the formation, maybe have instead of I guess we typically do a 4-3-3, maybe we do a 4-3-2-1 or 4-3-2-2 or something like that. Did any of those interesting things end up happening? Did we really change our formation to accommodate Gyökeres? Or I guess Zubimendi really it's a Gyökeres question.
Yeah, I didn't see anything. And again, formation is a lot of ways sort of how you start when how you line up when the ball is kicked and kicks off, and then otherwise as you adjust as the game goes on. I didn't see really a lot that different from us. Again, sort of the fullbacks, Ben White and Calafiori, were pushing forward. Zubimendi kind of slotted nicely into that party kind of defensive midfielder role. We saw Odegaard pushing forward a little bit more. We talked about, I think the big shift wasn't so much Gyökeres' positioning in terms of where he's the center of a 3-man front line. But I think some of the things that Gyökeres himself was trying to do, because that's just sort of where his play instincts as a player goes. I don't think it was so. To sort of answer the question from a formation perspective, I don't think we were changing the formation. I wonder though, as we go forward, you'll start seeing evolution, not an evolution, but a change in the way it plays out, because the players in those positions have different skill sets and tend to move in different ways on the field. So it's still almost certainly going to be a 4-3-3 most of the time, but you may see some of these guys popping up in different places as the game goes on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, cool. That's a good way to look at it, so I'll keep my eyes peeled. So who is your player of the week for this match?
I've kind of given a lot around. I've just kind of bounced around between the 3 players I mentioned, the central defenders and the keeper. At the end of the day, I'm gonna go with, I think, Gabriel. And I think you could easily pick Saliba or Raya here. Saliba, especially for some of the same reasons you saw Gabriel. I thought, though, They had a couple nervy moments while passing, but I always wonder with that, are they nervous? Like they look at these passes that go across the front of the goal to each other, and we're like, oh my goodness, don't do that.
Yeah,
but I feel like they just do it. It's like, yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah,
I guess you could pick any of them. I thought they did a good job. One of the things I thought they were really good at, and we talked about sort of the lack of quality in United shots. They got hung out to dry a couple times to as United transitioned quickly to the midfield. But a lot of times it seemed like Gabriel and Saliba were able to interfere with the attacking player or steer him in a direction where the shot he's taking is not the one he would have wanted, or not from a great angle. And again, sort of diminishing the percentage odds that shot goes in. So you're making, and that's good defense too.
Oh yeah.
You still get the shot on, but how many of the shots they take were kind of right at Raya, kind of rolled in on him? How many of them were just, as we said, blasted somewhere around the goal? They don't really get that close. And I think a lot of that goes to the two central defenders. So I'm going to say Gabriel, but if you said Saliba or Raya, whatever, I won't fight you for it.
Yeah, so I'd say he was my first choice. And like you said, not necessarily because of any one particular standout moment for him, but hey, it's good having him back. It seemed like he's in good form, but more as a token of the defense in general, that they were just the star of the show this time. I would say for me, I am going to pick Raya as my second choice in this match. And because he's kind of the captain of the defense, right? And looking at all 11 starting players and the few subs that came on, who among them, other than Raya, can you say performed as well as we expect them to at any point of a season? But from day one, like he's back. Like this is what we expect from Raya. Like he didn't make any notable mistakes. And I think it's also important to note too that the defense as a whole didn't either. There weren't any like, oh crap, like I nearly soiled myself a few times with some of those passes you were talking about inside our own 18-yard box. It was like, should you be doing that? But they didn't go badly. They could have gone badly, but they didn't. So, clearly they know what they're doing. But yeah, there weren't any of those really bad giveaways on the defensive end where you think, oh boy, that attempt was because of something they did wrong. So,
two things on Raya. Obviously he is he was given the man of the match, sort of the official man of the match award. So a very good choice. I think the save he makes, he's only called on to make one save, and he made it, and it was a good one. I think also and I remember Arteta talked about this, like when we signed him, right? It's not so much that what he does, it's what he prevents from happening. We saw the United keeper struggle with those corners, those set pieces. How many times did that corner come in and Raya just grabs it, and that's the end? He's got it. The play's over. Play's dead. Everybody runs the other way.
Right.
And he's so good at that. So it's, again, right, good defending isn't always about making the stop. It's about not having to make the stop.
Oh,
right?
Definitely. And it's when you see an underwhelming keeper performance like in this match where you really appreciate what Raya is doing and what he always does so well, too. Yeah.
Yeah, again, he plays for Spain. He plays nationally for Spain. So this is a team that doesn't lack for talent, even especially at the keeper position. And there's only one keeper at a time. So he's maybe not an international the way Alisson is for Brazil at Liverpool. But he's won the Golden Glove the last 2 years. He is a very good keeper.
Yeah. So very, very briefly, before we close out, I just want to appreciate this moment. We sometimes do a table talk where we kind of look at the table, and it's always funny looking at it after only one match is concluded. But appreciate this moment in the season when Sunderland is at number 2 behind Manchester City.
Right. Remember how I said, we're never as good as bad as you look at. You can't draw conclusions from opening day.
Yeah.
Because there's Sunderland, in second place.
Yeah. Now, their next match is against Burnley, so they might stay there for another week. Who knows how that'll go? But
we say not overdetermining it, but then if you look at the 3 teams in relegation, Burnley, West Ham, and Wolves, if they got relegated, that wouldn't be a huge surprise. But
yeah.
Yeah, that you're right. Sunderland up in second. But you know what? Maybe they pull a Forest, and maybe they're up at the top of the league the rest of the year. Forest, by the way, is also in fifth.
Right.
They had a nice start to the season as well.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny, like, it's not worth going into after the first game, but it's just funny, like, whatever the tie-breaking metrics are that they're going by when almost everybody has the same number of points, it's not evident from the Premier League official table right now. So, but yeah, so what is coming up for next week?
Right, next week, as we mentioned, our first home game, so it'll be nice to be back at the Emirates. Saturday against Leeds United. Welcome back to the Premier League. They beat Everton today to open their season. They are going to be scrappy and annoying. I think that's just sort of the Leeds way. But that game will be once again NBC.
All right, so streaming on Peacock for us streamers. So. Thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to the podcast version of our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with the link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to watch one of our kit reaction shorts from this week. We covered all 3 in successive shorts. And let us know your thoughts on the new kits. You can watch those on whatever platform you'd like, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you like to get your short form video content. We, of course, record the show using Zencaster. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our socials. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
Welcome back, Gooners. Here we go again.